How are you guys doing? Today we're going to be covering a missing persons case, that person being Brandon Swanson. So hopefully you guys enjoy this video, and without any further ado, let's get right on in. On May 13, 2008, Brandon Swanson would celebrate the end of his first year at Minnesota West Tech and Community College, where him along with a few other friends would decide to celebrate by going to two different parties, one in Canby and the other in Marshall. And it was reported that he would be drinking, but not to the point of being visibly drunk or overly intoxicated as reported by his friends. He would decide to leave the party in Marshall and decide to go back home, where he would be driving his green Chevy Lumina, until at one point he would end up swerving and hitting a ditch. With no way to pull the car out, he would call his parents at exactly 1:54 a.m., telling them that he had high sign of the car was fine, and that he was fine, but that he needed to be picked up. His parents would agree, asking where he was, and him, unsure, would say, "I'm pretty sure I'm near Lind." This would be repeated by his father by saying, quote, "We got in the pickup to go to the spot where he felt he was." So they would get in their pickup truck and began making their way over to him, which was about a 10-minute drive, with his father saying, quote, "He was absolutely positive he knew where he was." Brandon would stay on the phone with him even though they would have the occasional drops. They would tell him that they were going to turn their brights on and that he should do the same so that they knew it was him. But his parents were not able to find him, with Annette even saying, "We're flashing our lights." And even through the phone, they could hear him audibly turning off and on the light switch. "Don't you see me?" he would ask, with his father responding, "There's nothing, absolutely nothing." They would all grow frustrated to the point where Brandon would actually hang up on them before his mother would try to call again, apologizing. "We called at least 5 or 6 more times," his father would say. He never picked up the phone again. They would then ask his friends to help, where they searched all night. And at 6:30 a.m., Annette would call the Lynn Police Department to report that her son was missing, with them initially telling her that it was normal for someone his age to be out all night, especially after the end of school year, and that they would make a remark that would stick with her, telling her that her son had a right to be missing. They would eventually start a search and came up with nothing, where they would then start a countrywide request to expand their search. In order to better focus on the search, they would get Brandon's phone records where it would show that he was actually not near Lind and that he was actually in the vicinity of Taunton along State Highway 68, northwest of Marshall, which was 25 miles from Lind, which is where they found his Lumina, which was left abandoned in a ditch off the gravel road along Lincoln County line a mile north of Highway 68, bringing the PD of that county into the investigation. It was off the side of a field approach and the vehicle was hung up. Lincoln County Sheriff Jack Vitsky would say, "It's sort of a sharp incline. Nothing major, but enough that the car would get hung up so the wheels are too high off the ground to get any traction." After some time, they were not really able to find anything to indicate what exactly happened or where he went, as the area was covered in grass and gravel, so it made it very difficult for them to get any kind of information about what happened, with even Sheriff Vitsky saying, "There's grass in the ditch and gravel on the road, so it's possible to leave the vehicle and not leave any tracks." So one thing that was noted about the area was that there was a red light atop a grain elevator, which could have been where Brandon was going to because it was within walking distance and he could have seen it and possibly thought that it was Lind, so that's one of the possibilities of where he could have went to. Soon after, ground searches would commence along with flyovers and even search dogs coming in from Twin Cities. And that eventually a team of bloodhounds would pick up a 3-mile scent that would head west-northwest to an abandoned farm, where it would eventually follow to the Yellow Medicine River, which indicates that he could have went in it, as during this time the water's depth could range between about knee-high to about 15 feet deep, so it's possible he could have went in, especially as it was noted that during this time the water was going high and fast. Brian would also bring up the fact that Brandon mentioned how he would pass by fences and hearing nearby water, so it is possible with the theory of him possibly drowning in the river. There are 2 miles of the river in that area, and it took 6 hours to walk it, Vitsky would say, telling CNN he personally walked the river every day for 30 days. At the time, the dogs indicated, and it was believed, that he may have fallen in the river in that area, he would add. So we'd search that area on the premise that he'd be washed downstream. But they didn't find Brandon, with investigators and Annette not fully convinced that he drowned in the river, as he would have been found downstream if that was the case, with Annette even saying, "There really is nothing to indicate that he fell in the river." Also bringing up the fact that, obviously the bloodhounds would follow the trail to the abandoned farm. There was that too. It was a long trail, about 3 miles, Annette would say. The dogs actually jumped in the river, jumped back out, worked the trail up to another gravel road, and then lost the scent. Sheriff Vitsky still wouldn't deny the possibility of foul play. The only thing would have been if someone was in the shadows and they got him that way. "I can't say there wasn't someone else there, but I can't find any evidence of it." He also mentions the fact that the dogs or searchers didn't find any body or any sign of indication that, something happened, along with the fact that they didn't find any sort of evidence that he kind of succumbed to the elements too. So those possibilities, are kind of up in the air. After the original search ended with more than 500 volunteers, 34 dog handlers from 9 different states, spending 120 days looking for Brandon, finding no sign of him, with most of the efforts being discontinued, except Sheriff Vitsky, who would still walk the 2 miles of the Yellow Medicine River, still walking it for about 30 days even after. Searches would resume later that fall as fields that were planted were then harvested, and they would use dogs to search the areas, even including a new area that wasn't searched before, and they would continue this effort even in 2011. And in 2010, the Minnesota Bureau of Criminal Apprehension would then take over the case as the lead agency, and they would even set up a tip line where it would said that they would get 90 leads in relation to this case. And if you have any leads to where Brandon might be, I will leave the phone number on screen so that way you can leave a tip just in case. Over the years, the Swansons would leave their porch light on all night, every night, as a symbol and in the hopes that Brandon would come back home. And I, just like them, hope that he does come back to them. After the searches for Brandon concluded, Annette would still be stuck with the remark that the Lynn PD gave about her son having a right to be missing. So she, along with Brian, began to lobby for change, and that caused them to meet Marty Schaefer, who was a minority leader for the State House of Representatives, in which they kind of began to talk about the problems that she faced when talking to the police. Schaefer would introduce Brandon's Law, which would amend the existing missing child's program to change the word child into person, so that way it could classify for anyone even over the age of 18. Shockingly, Schaefer would recall having considerable pushback at first from the law enforcement community because they said that this law was developed behind a committee. The main thrust of the legislation was that there was a lot of protections in place for missing children under 18, but there was a lot of gaps for young adults. Representative Marty Schaefer would say. Part of it had to do with privacy, especially regarding cell phones, he would tell the Marshall Independent. Technology was emerging then, so there was a discussion about privacy and when they can ping you and when they can't. And if some kid had just gone from a party for 2 days, should we call in the cavalry? Those were the initial concerns law enforcement had, so we had to put a lot of framing around the bill. So I do have some thoughts of exactly, this whole situation with law enforcement and their reaction. On one side, it's not surprising. On the other side, it is a little bit surprising, including with what they said to Annette about, the son having a right to be missing. But I'll talk about that a little bit later at the end. So I'll hold my thoughts for now and just kind of continue on. The law would also require police, in addition to determining if the person is indeed missing after going through a process, they would also need to determine if the person is in danger, along with them notifying other departments during their investigation. Brandon's Law would also clarify that the agency that would take the report would be the lead agency, as this would kind of affect how the searches went for Brandon later on in his cases. So this would actually help them a lot just based off jurisdiction and all that. So in that aspect, it's really good. The police were also no longer allowed to refuse a report based on if there was any criminal activity involved, how long he was gone, if they did it on purpose, or even if there was no relationship with the person reporting it in correlation to the person that's missing. And after Brandon's Law was passed, 4 additional states would follow soon afterwards, having a similar bill. So now we reach the theory section. So this section I'm going to be a bit more loose. I'm not going to have to kind of go through exactly the events that pertain to this case. So I just want to kind of have you keep that in mind, that this is more loose, this is more off the cuff. And if at any point you see the mic moving around a lot, it's mostly because of this little guy. So just keep in mind, it's not because I'm doing it on purpose or anything, it's just, he just does not want to get a spot to sit down in. So as for the theories that we know now, we obviously know that he could have drowned in the river. There's the one where he could have intentionally disappeared. There's even foul play. So those are the ones that we know of that are possibilities of what might have happened to him. So in terms of the drowning theory of him drowning in the river, Annette already has mentioned that she doesn't believe it's possible because they could have found him downstream. I am going to believe her, and also based off images and stuff like that, I kind of could see where she's coming from. Is it possible that he could have drowned in the river? Yes, if you also include that he was drunk and also how drunk he is, if he could swim. There's these possibilities that could contribute to him drowning, but she believes that he didn't drown, so I'm going to stick with her and kind of lean into the fact that, it's possible that he probably didn't drown. She also mentioned the fact of, the dogs following the trail to the abandoned farm, so there is that possibility that something happened there, and that's maybe where he disappeared. So again, those are the sides, at least with what she's mentioned. And so Brian mentioned the fact that his son, during this time, even though he drank, he appeared to be there he appeared to possibly, just maybe at the very minimum, appear buzzed, that he didn't seem disoriented or confused. So you could lean on the possibility of him being sober during this time, or possibly just having a light buzz. So now, in terms of the possibility of him wanting to purposely disappear, there seems to be no indication of that, as mentioned by his friends and family. They mentioned that there was no indication of him, having any sort of problems or any kind of give that would indicate that he wanted to leave or wanted to disappear. So in terms of that one, it doesn't seem like that theory is possible. And so now we're going to go into the section where I give my own thoughts, my own possibilities, my own 2 cents. So I just kind of want to preface that these are just my thoughts, my speculations. These you should not take seriously. These are just my ideas of what possibly could have been. I don't treat these as a joke. I am only going with the information that I'm given. I am no detective. I am no PI. I am no form of law enforcement. So just keep that in mind with any of the ideas that I kind of give you. So let's cover things that I think seemed noticeable as I was doing my own research. And again, I want to do this as respectfully as I can. These are just my opinions, my thoughts as I was doing my own research. So let's start off with the list. So number 1, he was reported to be drinking, so we know that. Number 2, it was reported that Brandon was legally blind in one eye because of childhood injury, and that he wore glasses and that they were left in the car. That's something that we didn't know about through this story. I only know that because of one article that mentioned it. As I was kind of researching it, no other article mentioned that this kind of thing that was left. So I thought it was big enough for me to kind of leave it in, so that way you guys have that idea and know that he wore glasses and that he wasn't wearing them at the time of his disappearance. So number 3, his car was found in a ditch off a gravel road near Highway 68. Number 4, Brandon was mentioned passing fences and hearing nearby water. And lastly was his final words. So I want to cover at least the most likely possibilities of what might actually have happened. And again, I want to do this as respectfully as I can, and these are just my own ideas as to what may have happened, not that it actually has happened. So the first one, I believe it was either a person that got him, and the second one would be most likely an animal that possibly got him. And I kind of will explain the chain of events and why I kind of believe these might be possible. So let's go right into that. So one of the possibilities that I align to is that he may have been more drunk than he initially let off. It was mentioned by the friends that he didn't seem overly intoxicated or too drunk, and then the father did mention during the calls that he didn't seem confused or disoriented. But I guess that depends on the person that's drinking. It also depends on how much you can drink. He was 5'6", I believe. So he could be a heavy drinker, he could be a light drinker, we don't know. And there's the possibility of we don't know how much exactly he drank, so we don't know the quantity of alcohol that was in his system. Of course, if his friends kept track of how much he drank during the events, like they were following him or they were around him making sure to keep track of how much he was drinking, then maybe we can debunk that. But that's a possibility that I kind of line into, that he may have been more drunk, because you could play it off. At least I know from personal experience, I have definitely drank a lot and am very good at playing kind of like a sober vibe. Like I can definitely give the vibe that I'm more sober than I can initially give off. So now there's a mention of his glasses being left in the car. From what we know, he could have either taken them off on the drive, or he could have taken them off at the end when he got high centered into the road. So those are the 2 points where we could think of, when he was wearing his glasses and when he wasn't. There is the possibility that he took them off when he was getting onto Highway 68, believing that he was heading home. Or there could have been the situation where he was drinking and he kind of assumed that the dorms felt like home, so he was heading towards, the dorms, believing that he was actually heading home. Those are the 2 possibilities that I kind of lean into. I wish I had confirmation if he did wear glasses when he would drive, or he would take them off when he was driving. That could also kind of correlate to what exactly the events that would happen as he got on to the highway. So that's like the second point. And so this would lead up to the events of him swerving into the ditch. Now for that, There's only two possibilities that at least that come to my mind that seem logical. Would be one, that he saw an animal and he swerved to get out of the way and he ended up in the ditch. The other would be the alcohol. Maybe it caused him to kind of swerve in. So those are the only two possibilities that I can see. So that would happen. Then the events of him calling his parents, him getting out, leaving his glasses in the car, and seeing lights where he would assume it'd be Lind, and that's where he would start walking towards that. So that's the story that we know so far, at least with the information that I'm telling you right now. So he would have either been in the vicinity of the Mud Creek River or the Yellow Medicine River, as those are the two closest body of waters that are close to the car that was left there. And obviously there's a mention of him passing by fences and hearing the sound of running water. So those are the two most probable locations of where he could have been. And then there's the fact, that he was walking about 45 minutes and then he would say, oh shit, before, obviously the call would drop. So that's what we know so far. So there are a few ideas that you could lean into when it comes to a person or multiple people when it involves this disappearance. The one I'm leaning towards the most is that it's probably human trafficking. And the reason why I believe that is that he was obviously at parties, he got drunk. There might have been someone that noticed him either at the party or outside of the party. So they would then decide to follow him, where they would then, obviously see him being left in the ditch and him, trying to make his way back. So that's the perfect moment for them to get out, start chasing after him. He would obviously turn around, say, oh shit, get in a confrontation. And that would basically make it impossible for him to get in contact with his parents. And that would kind of be my first possible theory. That's the one that I'm leaning into. Of course, it could be one person, getting in the confrontation and stuff like that. But I most likely believe it could have been a group of people that, obviously got him and, took him away. There is the possibility of murder. I just don't think that's likely, at least with what's given. The next one with an animal, it'll make a little bit more sense why I believe it compared to murder. So we'll move on to the next theory. Now, in terms of my second theory, I believe it could have been two possibilities when it came to animals, one being a bear and the other a cougar, just based off the capability of killing a person and then the possibility of where they live. The bear didn't seem as likely, just because at least from the maps that I've seen of bear sightings, it seemed it happens more up north than it does in South Minnesota. In terms of cougars, it seemed more likely just based off sightings and stuff like that. They are, at least from what I've seen, a little bit more south. They could be more or less anywhere, but just based off sightings, and I'll put the image somewhere on the screen, but there is kind of like a report of sightings, and where exactly he lived in, there were two sightings in, I believe, 2012. So it's not impossible that a cougar was in that area at the time, and that could kind of lead to the events of him walking, obviously seeing the silhouette of an animal, him saying oh shit, then that could trigger the cougar to go after him, obviously killing him. We don't know how far he ran or what the events could transpire. So that seems, at least to me, most likely if it was an animal. Not to mention the fact that I didn't think of this later on until just barely, but they at some point stopped the search and did it later in the fall because of obviously the fields. So it's not impossible that the cougar possibly ate him a little bit, and then other creatures could feed off the body, and then by the time that they start searching for him, there's really nothing to indicate where he is. That definitely isn't an impossibility. I believe that has happened before when it came to murder cases. So in terms of that being a possibility, I don't throw it too far off the wall. So those are the two most likely. Obviously there are possibilities of debunking it, which I will cover in a second. But I also kind of want to talk just a little bit about him drowning in the river. It does increase his chances of dying in it if he did drink more, but obviously we don't have any information on that except for what's been reported by obviously friends and family. So there is that possibility. There is also the possibility that the dogs did not pick up his scent. At least from what I could find, search dogs are not 100% reliable. They are highly reliable, apparently, from what I could find, but it's not like 100%. So there's still the possibility that the dogs weren't really leading the searchers to the correct location. So there is that. And obviously, I'm not an expert nor a PI. These are only speculations, and obviously my theories can be debunked easily. As it was mentioned before, there was no indication of foul play, no blood, nothing of that. So there's no indication that anyone was following him. As far as I know, there was no correlation with him having any feuds with anyone or having any cause for someone to do anything to him. So obviously my theories could be easily debunked. Other than that, there was something I wanted to say. One of the things that would have been nice, which it really does suck, it really does make it tragic, was the fact that the area that he was lost in was full of grass and gravel, so there was like no dirt, no nothing to kind of indicate where exactly he went. I do not doubt that if they were able to find a trail to follow, they would have had a higher chance of maybe finding him, or at least finding, you know, like his phone, some sort of cloth, any kind of indication to kind of give an idea of what exactly happened. But that's all the information that we have. I still hope he's out there somewhere. I don't want to leave it through something supernatural. I don't want to make that claim, especially because they do classify this as like a mysterious disappearance or a strange disappearance, but I want to leave this in the realm of logic and reality, and, you know, possibly being something realistic, and not say like he magically disappeared. I feel like there is some sort of possibility of him, you know, realistically being gone for something legitimate. And so we reached the end of the video. This is more just me kind of finishing up any kind of thoughts that I have. This really is a case that kind of leaves you thinking, you know, of what might have happened, and you kind of do wish that there was more information, so that way, you know, you could have a little bit more to figure out what kind of happened to him. And I want to quickly just kind of bring up, you know, Annette talking about what the Lind PD mentioned about her son having a right to be missing. I know it's not strange for them to, you know, get reports of, you know, children running away and stuff like that. Like, I know it happens often for them, but I feel like it's a little bit out of pocket to say that to a mom. I feel like it's a standard as a professional that you're not supposed to say something like that. I feel like it's so weird as like a dispatcher saying like, oh, your son has a right to be missing. Like, I don't know, it's a little iffy. I didn't like that. I didn't like the supposed, you know, pushback that they give when it came to Brandon's Law when it was, you know, being created. I felt like that was a little bit weird. I know maybe it's because they don't want to do so much work, and I'm only saying this, like, obviously I'm nobody to say it, but I feel like it's maybe because they want to avoid doing so much work, and they kind of don't want to put in the extra effort to doing these cases, because they might believe, at least what I'm thinking that they believe, I think that they think that most of these are like nothing burger cases, because, you know, obviously they experienced it. They have more occasions where, you know, it's obviously more runaway teens and stuff like that. So they just feel like it's a lot more work for nothing. That's maybe the possibility of what they might have been thinking, so that's why they gave that pushback. But obviously I'm not one of them, so I don't know. That's just what I'm thinking of. But still, I feel like it's something in relation to, you should still do it just because it keeps people safe. So even though it might seem like you're not going to get much out of it, I think the end goal is still a benefit. There's like a thing that happened at my workplace where, you know, something happened, and, you know, this guy was telling everyone when we were doing like a meeting about safety, where we have to do an extra process to get a specific task done, and he would say that it doesn't matter if it takes, you know, 1 hour, 2 hours more, as long as you're safe, as long as it adds a layer of safety. So that's kind of the overall message that I'm giving when I mention, you know, the police and all this. It may seem like a lot more work, and I'm speaking to like a police officer that doesn't exist, so but like, it's a lot more effort to maybe save a life, and it might not seem worth it in the moment, but if it does contribute to saving a life, even at a minimal scale, I feel like it's most likely worth it. It's definitely worth, saving a life. So that's the end of that part. Now, although this isn't 100% a happy ending, the fact that Brandon was able to cause change even after his disappearance, such as Brandon's Law, and the fact that that law was implemented into other states, it still shows that there was something good that came out of this, horrible event. So in terms of that, I think we can be happy that, Brandon was able to still make a change for potential victims or people that are in potential danger of anything that may happen to them in the future, and can be saved because of what he caused. So with that, I do want to end it off with saying that I hope he's still out there. I really do. That, yeah, he's still out there, and that hopefully he still comes back to his parents. Yeah, that's the end of this video. I hope you guys enjoy the rest of your day. There's more projects on the way. I'll try to get them uploaded as fast as I can. I did want to talk about that a little bit in this video. My schedule is going to be at least a little bit wonky. In terms of uploading, I'm debating on doing one video a month. Like right now, my schedule is like 2-3 weeks at the very most for the next upload, but I think I might do one a month, just depending on how long the videos are, because they do take a long time to research and then to record and then to edit. So there is that. So if you get like a video that's like 20 minutes, then generally that's one that I'm like working on pretty fast. So it's like if it's within 20 minutes, like this video, or less than, I don't know how long this video is, but if it's like less than 30 minutes, then that's generally one that I'm like getting done within like 2 weeks based off my work schedule. So those might become more frequent. If they're like 1 hour or 1 hour plus, then those ones generally do take a long time, and those might be more of like a month upload. So I guess we'll see. There are other avenues that I kind of want to take to provide more content, which is a good thing I'm talking about it right now. So there are these videos where I talk about history, I talk about conspiracies, like about other true crime stuff like that. There are those. I believe the next one will be a conspiracy, either a conspiracy or maybe something historical. So you guys got that for the future. What else do I want to say? You got those for different avenues. I was debating on streaming, so I might stream either research streams or video game streams. I haven't really locked in on that yet. That's something for the future, maybe in like a few months from now, once I kind of establish myself a little bit more. So there's that. I am considering doing gaming content, but it'll only be horror, at least as of right now. Like something that I can do into a 20-30 minute video, something that doesn't take too long. And if it becomes like a video series of me going through gameplay, then I don't want it to be too long. So that's maybe more forms of content that I can provide. I just don't know if I'm going to do that now or in the future. So I think that's something you can look forward to. Other than that, I don't think I have anything else to talk about. That's basically all the news, at least in terms of future content for the channel. Regardless, I hope you guys enjoyed. If you enjoyed everything that I posted so far, please feel free to subscribe. And if not, then just like the video. It tells me that I'm doing a good enough job, and that hopefully I can continue making good content. And if you have any suggestions, whether you think it might not be worth mentioning it, I'm more than welcome to hear it out. And obviously I could post it in a later video. I definitely like doing the research. So yeah, I think that's about it. Regardless, yeah, I hope you guys have a good morning, good afternoon, and a good night. And until next time, you guys take care.
So guys, make sure to follow, subscribe, all that good stuff, please.